Hi, Rose here, founder of McDonald Bookkeeping Services, and I am back with a quick tip. So, I usually have two common questions that are asked of me when I'm consulting. And one is, how do I know if my company is making money? And two is getting the most out of your employee, or when do I know it's a good time to hire? So, let's talk about the first one. So, let's just give an example. You are a bakery and you're selling baked goods. And so you hire three people in the back and they are baking those goods for you. Well, that would be considered your cost of labor. Then you have to have the products that you have to purchase. So you purchase all the flour and sugar and etc., not including the utensils, pots and pans and stuff like that, not the equipment, but only the products that make the baked goods. That would be your cost of material. So you would take your revenue or income, subtract it from that cost of labor and that cost of material. Now, when it comes to the actual equipment, that would be an asset to your company and that would not show up on your income statement. So that's just kind of a quick reference to give you an idea of how you know if your company is making money, because you are only going to want to look at the gross profit from your income or the revenue versus what it costs that's directly related to the product or service that you provide. And then everything below that would be overhead administrative costs that gives you your net income. Now, let's talk about employees and hiring the right employees. First, I always recommend that understand what your company needs in its dynamics. Is there an organizational agreement that you have in place? Do you look at like the policies and procedures to understand how to run your company? Many times, a lot of employers don't even understand how to run their company and they're just kind of going off at a whim. So it is always good to have an organizer to come in or to sit down and know how I want my company to run smoothly, put it in writing, and how it fits in with my company. So, the best example to give you, it is often find that people will hire one person, they'll have the receptionist, and she's answering the phone and doing the bookkeeping. And then you can have a separate payroll person, or you have her doing everything, or you have an office manager doing the bookkeeping, also the HR, and answering the phone. Well, then you can really be losing money and time. And the best way to explain that is if you ask someone to do payroll and they're learning how to do payroll and answer the phone while they're learning that task or not clearly understanding the task fluently, then while they're learning, they're slowing down time that could be productive time to your business. If you have a person for HR, but you have the payroll person doing payroll and HR, but their skill isn't necessarily human resource, you brought them in as a payroll person. And payroll and human resource are two different animals. You know, there's their human resource and human resource generalist, but also updating, keeping up with wage and labor issues. So I always say get the best by hiring two people. And you may not even need to hire a full time person, versus if you had one person doing it and you had them doing a full day's task for all of these positions, and there could be two or three positions, one is always going to be lacking somewhere. So it's best to hire the best in that area, pay them sufficient for what their background skill is and expertise, and actually then you'd end up spending less time. You also want to consider third party applications being used in that cost. So the best example to give is I work for some companies and they use these onboarding applications, the HR department, where they're not really hiring on a regular basis. So they're not hiring like your Walmarts and all these big department stores. So they have this kiosk that you walk into, or this online portal that you can register where all the applicants come in. And that application is actually doing the work for you. Your HR person is pretty much just putting it all together. And it comes in an email. Versus if you had an HR person that sits down physically with the person or meets in this type of format, explaining how the company policies work, getting them onboarded, interviewing, because now they're actual having productivity time that in your company versus the application doing some of the work. So you want to consider when you're bringing on an HR person or even a payroll person, is it an application? What percentage of application or what percentage of time, I'm sorry, is that application taking? So if the application is doing most of the work, and you're only doing 40–50% of the work, you want to consider that person's pay and that person's hours. So if you want to talk about this more and get some more insight in regards to your business and how it might relate to your business, visit my website, McDonaldBookkeeping.com, schedule some time or give me a call. Until next time, bye for now.